Prismatic Evolutions, the latest Pokemon trading card game expansion, is finally standard format legal as of January 31st, 2025. And with that, it does quite shake up the metagame as we introduce a few new cards, such as the item-locking Bidoof and, of course, the heavy-hitting Regigigas. But with that, let's take a look at what this set does to the meta and the top 5 decks that you should be playing at your locals, regionals, or international championships coming up in February. Here we are. At number 5, we're taking a look at Ceruledge EX with the backup of Origin form Palkia VSTAR. As a 1-1 line, the Palkia VSTAR paired with Radiant Greninja can use that Star Portal ability to accelerate energy onto Greninja to take out single prize Pokemon. And a lot of the best decks right now, which we'll get to in a little bit here, are definitely utilizing setting up a little bit more aggressive boards. And, you know, being able to just take 2 prizes real easy with Radiant Greninja and having a single prize in the active to not throw away 2 feels really good. This deck plays a 4-3 line of the main attacker Ceruledge EX with its attack Abyssal Flames. It does 30 plus 20 more damage for every energy card in your discard pile. Additionally, while there are no new cards from Prismatic Evolutions in this deck, it does feel really good into the upcoming metagame here. Heavy research counts, you've got Carmine, you've got a lot of supporter and Pokemon utility that are going to help you get the energy into the discard pile without necessarily being stuck behind item cards. While they do help, you are able to just attach a single fire energy to Charcadet and use Will-O-Wisp into Bidoof for a knockout. And this is why I place this at the 5th spot in the top 5 of this list. Coming in at the number 4 spot, we're taking a look at Archaludon EX, or Archaludon, or Raga, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyways, though, this deck is a little bit more straightforward and more simple to play. However, that is not anything against what this deck can do. In a world of basic Pokemon EXs, 220 is definitely a magic number to hit. And with the power of Relicanth with its Memory Dive, if your Archaludon takes a massive hit and does not get knocked out, you can then copy the Raging Hammer attack from the pre-evolution Duraludon. It does 80 plus, 10 more damage for every damage counter on this Pokemon. So if they hit you for 200, you can hit them back for 280, and then you can accelerate into different knockout paths and strategies. This deck itself is also playing a single copy of the Bidoof with Itchy Pollen. It can attack for free, do 10 damage, and item lock your opponent out of the game for a few turns. Additionally, from Prismatic Evolutions, this deck is playing Black Belch Training. During the turn you play this, your Pokemon do 40 more damage into your opponent's active Pokemon EX. So effectively, Metal Defender will hit for 260, and that does change some math and matchups for you. Now, this deck always wants to be gusting with Boss's Orders, and there's also other versions of this that play Dialga and just so many other moving pieces, but this one is more straightforward and to the point. It's a little heavier on the supporters. You want to get the metal energy into the discard pile so you can evolve into Arch and use the Assemble Alloy ability to accelerate energy onto itself and just continue to take 2-hit knockout after knockout after knockout. I feel like we're beating a dead horse in this case. We're beating a almost 3-year-old bird. Lugia VSTAR is popping its way back into the metagame once again in this new format. And this is pretty straightforward, and it's really good into the Bidoofs, of course, when everyone's hopping on board. You've got a lot of supporter lines, and you just want to get your Archeops into the discard pile, evolve into your Lugia VSTAR, use Summoning Star to bench those Archeops from the discard pile, and then have access to Primal Turbo every single turn. While Lugia has been around for quite some time, it always feels like it's getting new tools and tricks into the deck. And in this case, the newest card from Prismatic Evolutions is that Regigigas with 160 HP, but its attack is Jewel Breaker for 100 damage and 4 energy. However, if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Terra Pokemon, this attack does 230 more damage. That is going to allow you to knock out some of the most popular Stage 2 Pokemon EX on a single prize Pokemon for just 4 energy. Looking at you, Charizard. Looking at you, Dragapult. And additionally, you know, Jewel Breaker can also hit into Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is a Terra type, and many other Pokemon that people are going to be looking at into the future. That Regigigas really does shake up and make so many different matchups a lot easier. And to combat the popularity of Bidoof, this deck is heavier on the supporters and Pokemon support. So there's only a single 10 item cards in this deck. 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Capturing Aroma, and 2 Nest Ball. Everything else, Pokemon, Energy, and Supporter. So keep that in mind when you're sleeving this up. If you think your locals is going to be a little bit heavy on the Bidoof, then hey, maybe a Lugia, it's for you. Coming in the next spot up here, we have the Gardevoir EX from the Scarlet and Violet base set. This thing has been a powerhouse since its introduction and has consistently remained relevant and viable through its release. And with the Psychic Embrace ability, being able to attach as many Psychic Energy as you'd like from your discard pile onto your Pokemon, in turn for putting damage counters on them, you're able to power up such a unique toolbox of attackers and utility Pokemon. In this case, the Refinement Kirlia is the linchpin of the deck, being able to discard a card and draw 2. That's how you're going to get your energy into the discard pile, fill up your hand, and give yourself more options. To combat the ever-popular item locking, we are going back to the roots of TM Evolution as our first turn option here, and it's accessible thanks to Arven. With the shift in the metagame, Gardevoir EX is able to poke its head back into contention here with a rotating cast of attackers and tech options. Things like Screamtail, Cresselia, and Drifloon, and Monkey Dory all flourish with damage counters on your side of the board. Cresselia is able to move them off of your Pokemon onto one of their Pokemon. You've got Screamtail able to snipe a bench Pokemon equal to how much damage is on it. You've got Drifloon being able to hit the active for however many damage counters on it times 30, and you're able to do a lot of different things. The linchpin of the deck is definitely going to be the Monkey Dory with its Adrenal Brain ability. If it has a Darkness energy attached, you're able to move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of their Pokemon, helping you set up multiple prize turns. In addition, you're going to be using primarily single prize attackers with this deck, so your opponent will have to find a way to gust around and maybe bring up the Gardevoir EX if it's even in play. With Bidoof running rampant, once again, we're looking at TM Evolution coming back into the mainstay of this deck, being able to blindly go second, attach the TM Evolution, which is searchable off of Arven, attach an energy, and start setting up your Kirlia with their Refinement ability to help you accelerate through the deck and find the tools and pieces you need. I think this deck is a very solid option leading forward. It just takes a little bit of time to play correctly and is prone to a single game match or a tie. So just be very careful and make sure to sequence yourself correctly and, at an appropriate speed, so where you're not, getting ties, which are effectively losses in some situations. And finally, coming in the number 1 spot, my favorite deck to play in this upcoming format is Dragapult EX. This thing is an absolute menace against setup decks, and with a little bit of foresight and some planning, this is probably going to be one of the matchups that you should focus on the most when making your deck selection in this metagame. Dragapult EX has 320 HP and 2 attacks, Jet Headbutt for 70 for 1 colorless energy, and Phantom Dive for a fire, a psychic, and it does 200 damage to the opponent's active Pokemon and allows you to place 6 damage counters onto your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. A lot of decks are heavily relying on setting up their things like their opposing Dreepies, their Charmanders, their Ralts, so on and so forth. And Phantom Dive just allows you to start setting up the board so you can take multiple knockouts on a single turn. Additionally, using the Dusclops and Dusknoir package here with Cursed Blast, being able to put 5 or respectively 13 damage counters elsewhere in exchange for a opponent taking a prize card allows you to set up even more damage. The deck will rely on Bidoof's Itchy Pollen to slow down the game at the very beginning and help you establish your board. We're also rocking the TM Evolution and Arven package, just like in the Gardevoir deck, to get into our Dracoloaks. That way we can evolve into Dragapult as soon as possible. Dracoloak's Recon Directive feels so good. You get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 into your hand and 1 at the bottom, reminiscent of Airmail of the past, Pidgeottos, and of course, similar to Flower Selecting on Comfy, but you're not putting cards into the Lost Zone. Additionally, this deck is now utilizing lands to search for 3 Dragon-type Pokemon and put them into your hand to combat opposing Bidoof. This deck has a lot of versatility and a lot of different applied instances that you can use here. There's a lot of different lines of play, and placing damage counters in the correct place is a really 5-headed move. Sometimes you're able to take a 4 or even sometimes a 6 prize turn in certain matchups, especially with Bidoof slowing the game down and putting damage on board. Radiant Alakazam is also a fantastic choice here. Being able to move 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon is a fantastic choice. This is why I'm locking this in as my #1 pick in the Prismatic Evolutions metagame. If you found this video helpful at all, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and commenting down below what decks you want to play in this metagame. If you, for whatever reason, like my voice, keep an eye out for our podcast, Gust of Wind. It is coming back in the near future. You can find that on all the social media platforms, as well as Spotify and Apple. With all that, I'll see you guys in the next video.